What happens when one of the biggest rock bands on the entire planet loses its legendary voice at the peak of its fame? In 2013, 3 Days Grace did something no one thought was possible. They kept going. But over a decade later, they did the impossible. This is the insane story of how a band faced a disaster that should have destroyed them, but they survived, completely reinvented themselves, and then pulled off the craziest reunion anyone has ever seen. The story of 3 Days Grace isn't just about selling millions of albums or having so many number one hits that they basically owned rock radio for a decade. This is one of the most insane survival stories in music history. It's a story packed with chaos, personal demons, and shocking exits. But it's also a story of incredible strength and somehow coming back together. This band has stared off a cliff more than once and has always found a way to fight back, stronger than before. Their journey is just like their music, full of pain and struggle, but always fighting for that little bit of hope. For being small town kids in Canada, from being small town kids in Canada to a crazy lineup change that split their fans in half and a reunion that nobody saw coming, the story of 3 Days Grace is one of modern rock's most epic tales. It proves that sometimes the biggest disasters create the most powerful art, and that a band is more than just one guy. It's a living thing that can survive anything. This is the complete, chaotic, and mind-blowing history of 3 Days Grace. Before they were selling out arenas worldwide, 3 Days Grace started with a few high school kids in Norwood, Ontario, who just wanted to sound like the 90s rock bands they loved. In 1992, they started a band called Groundswell. You had Adam Gontier on vocals, Neil Sanderson on drums, and Brad Walst on bass, and some friends on guitar. They were a classic garage band, playing parties and local bars, trying to be like Nirvana. They even made a full-length album in 1995 called Wave of Popular Feeling, which showed they had some serious potential. But like most young bands, it fell apart. By the end of 1995, Groundswell was over. It looked like the dream was dead, but the main three guys, Adam, Neil, and Brad, knew they had something special. 2 years later, in 1997, they decided to go all in. They moved to Toronto as a smaller, hungrier three-piece band. They needed a new name, and they picked 3 Days Grace. Adam once said the name basically asked a question. If you only had 3 days to change your life, could you do it? It was all about urgency, a theme that would become insanely important for them. In Toronto, they met a legendary producer named Gavin Brown, who saw their potential. Working with him, they recorded a demo with a song that would change their lives forever. I Hate Everything About You. That one song was so good, it started a massive bidding war between record labels. They signed a huge deal with Jive Records, and just like that, they went from small town dreamers to the world stage. The fuse was lit. That urgency in their name was about to get very real. The year 2003 was a huge moment for rock music, and 3 Days Grace was about to set it on fire. On July 22nd, 2013, they dropped their first album, 3 Days Grace, self-titled. To kick it off, they released the song that started it all, I Hate Everything About You. And it was an absolute nuke. That opening guitar riff and Adam Gontier's unique, painful voice created a perfect storm of anger and catchy hooks that rock radio stations couldn't resist. It was a brutally honest song about toxic relationships, and millions of people connected with it. The song was played everywhere, went from rock radio to mainstream radio and becoming a massive anthem for a whole generation. But the album had way more hits too. Songs like Just Like You and Home cemented their signature sound. To make their live shows even bigger, they brought in lead guitarist Barry Stock in late 2003, making them a four-piece powerhouse. The album was a monster, going double platinum in the US and platinum in Canada. With that success came an insane touring schedule. They were opening for huge bands like Nickelback and Evanescence, playing for bigger and bigger crowds every single night. They weren't just some band from a small town in Canada anymore. They were a global rock machine. The pressure was unbelievable though, but it was everything they had worked for. 3 Days Grace had officially arrived, but the pain they sang about wasn't just for show. It was about to become dangerously real. After their debut album blew up, 3 Days Grace should have been celebrating. I mean, heck, they should have been doing dances in the street and popping champagne. But behind the scenes, their frontman was secretly falling apart. The insane pressure of fame and touring had led Adam Gontier into a serious addiction to the painkiller Oxycontin. It was taking over his life, and the voice of the band was, as he said, in a dark place. His bandmates knew they had to do something drastic. They stopped everything, the touring, the writing, so Adam could get help. He checked himself into a rehab center in Toronto. Alone with nothing but a journal, he started writing. He poured all his anger, pain, and his entire battle for sobriety onto the pages. These weren't just lyrics, though. They were raw confessions. In fact, future mega hits like Animal I Have Become, Pain, and Over were all written while he was in rehab. When Adam got out, the band took these incredibly personal writings and turned them into their next album. 1X, released on June 13th, 2006, was a completely raw look at addiction and the fight to get clean. Adam said himself this album was way more personal and came from the darkest time of his life. The first single, Animal I Have Become, was a punch to the gut. The lyrics were a literal cry for help from his addiction. The song was a gigantic hit, becoming the most played rock song of 2006 in Canada. Follow-up singles, Pain and Never Too Late, became massive anthems for fans dealing with their own struggles. 1X was an even bigger success than their first album, going triple platinum in the US and Canada. More than that, though, it created a super deep connection with their fans. People saw their own battles in the music, and 3 Days Grace became more than just a band at that point. They were a lifeline for so many people. In 2007, Billboard named them the #1 rock artist of the year. They had turned Gontier's personal hell into a masterpiece and had become one of the biggest bands in the world. But the fight that made them famous was so far from over. After an album as dark and real as 1X, what could you possibly do next? The band answered that question on September 22nd, 2009, with their third album, Life Starts Now. Even the title was a statement. They had survived the darkness and were ready for something more hopeful. You could still hear the band's heavy sound, but there was a new feeling of optimism there. Drummer Neil Sanderson said it was about getting knocked down and getting back up again. The first single, Break, went straight to #1, proving they were still on top. But other songs like The Good Life showed a more positive side to the band. The album was another huge success, debuting at #3 on the Billboard 200 and going platinum. They launched another massive world tour, playing sold-out arenas with bands like Breaking Benjamin. On the outside, everything was perfect. They were one of the most successful rock bands on the planet, delivering hit after hit. Life Starts Now proved they could evolve beyond the pain that they had. But under the surface, the rock and roll lifestyle never stops. For Adam, staying sober on the road was a constant battle. And after almost 20 years of being in a band, he was starting to feel creatively trapped. The success of the Life Starts Now era was just the calm before the biggest storm the band had ever seen. A storm that was about to rip them apart. In 2012, 3 Days Grace released Transit of Venus, another successful album where they experimented with new sounds. They were all set for a gigantic tour with Shinedown. Everything seemed normal and great and awesome. And then the unthinkable happened. On January 9th, 2013, the rock world got an announcement that just made no sense at all. Adam Gontier had quit 3 Days Grace, effective immediately. The band's statement said it was because of a non-life-threatening health issue, and fans who knew Adam's history immediately thought the worst. But the truth was way more complicated than that. The band themselves were completely blindsided. They said they got a letter from Adam's lawyer on December 21st, 2012, telling them he was done. They had a new album to promote and a massive tour just weeks away. The band was in complete shock. Adam put out his own letter to the fans to set the record straight, though. The truth is, he said, I am sober. That chapter in my life is over. He said that after 20 years, he just needed to be on his own and was tired of the endless album tour cycle. He felt like he had to stop the machine from rolling just to save himself. The band was in an impossible position, though. If they canceled the tour, it would have been a financial disaster. They had two choices: give up and end the band, or find a way to keep going. The urgency their name stood for was now about pure survival. They had lost their voice, their main songwriter, and the face of the band. For so many people, Adam Gontier was 3 Days Grace. The split was messy, fans were angry, and the band's future was about to just completely disappear. With their tour only weeks away and no singer, the band turned to their bass player, Matt Walst, who had a crazy idea. The answer was his younger brother, Matt Walst. Matt was already the frontman for another successful band, My Darkest Days. And not only was he family, but Matt had actually co-written songs for 3 Days Grace before. He knew the music, he knew the guys, and he had the voice for it. The band made a desperate call. With almost zero time to prepare, Matt agreed to fill in for the tour. His very first show was a true trial by fire, walking onto an arena stage in front of thousands of fans who were skeptical, angry, and just waiting for him to fail. The reaction was completely divided. A huge part of the fan base was furious, screaming, "No Adam, no 3 Days Grace," online. They saw Matt as a replacement who could never fill Adam's shoes. But another group of fans was just happy the band was still alive and was willing to give the new guy a shot. Matt Walst handled the insane pressure like an absolute champ. Night after night, he sang his heart out, respecting the old songs while bringing his own energy. He wasn't trying to be Adam. He was being Matt Walst, the new singer of 3 Days Grace. After the tour, it was clear this was more than just a temporary fix. The chemistry was undeniable. In March of 2014, they made it official. Matt Walst was the new lead singer of 3 Days Grace. Now they just had to prove it in the studio. In 2015, they released their fifth album, Human. The lead singles, Painkiller and I Am Machine, sounded like they were written directly about their situation. They were all about being unstoppable. The album was another huge success, shutting up a lot of the doubters and proving that 3 Days Grace could not just survive, but be huge with a new singer. Matt Walst wasn't a replacement anymore. He was the new heart of the band, and he had helped them pull off one of the craziest comebacks in rock history. While Matt Walst, as the official frontman, 3 Days Grace entered a completely new era. The drama was over, and it was all about the future now. They were about to prove their survival was not a fluke. Their 2018 album, Outsider, was a massive statement. The title said it all. After everything they had been through, the band felt like outsiders in their own world, and the album owned that feeling. The lead single, The Mountain, was a powerful anthem about climbing back after being knocked down, a metaphor for their own story that became another #1 hit. 4 years later, in 2022, they dropped Explosions. The lead single, So-Called Life, was an aggressive track that captured the chaos of the world, and guess what? It also went straight to the top of the charts. Throughout this time, the band never stopped touring. Their shows were the perfect mix of old and new. Matt did an amazing job singing the Gontier era classics that fans screamed for, like I Hate Everything About You and Animal I Have Become, while also showing off their powerful new music. This era was so important. It proved that 3 Days Grace was bigger than just one person. They hadn't just survived losing their original singer, they were thriving, creating hit after hit with a new identity. They had closed one chapter of their story and written a bunch of new ones. But nobody knew there was one more insane plot twist left. For over 10 years, the 3 Days Grace story had two different timelines, the Adam era and the Matt era. And the ghost of Adam's legacy was always there. Then, in October 2024, the impossible happened. After posting some cryptic videos, the band made an announcement that sent an earthquake through the rock world. Adam Gontier was rejoining 3 Days Grace. But this wasn't what you think. In a move that almost no band has ever done, they announced that Matt Walst was also staying too. 3 Days Grace was now a 5-piece band with 2 lead singers. They weren't replacing their past, they were merging it. The reunion was years in the making, as Adam reconnected with his old friends and healed old wounds. The anger from the split was gone, replaced by friendship. Adam said, "It's like we got back in a room together and picked up where we left off." Matt was just as excited, saying they were doing something that no band has ever done. We got our first taste of this new superband in November of 2024 with the single Mayday, where Adam and Matt traded powerful vocals. This all led to the announcement of their 8th album, Alienation, which came out on August 22nd, 2025. The album features both singers on every track, creating what the band called a two-headed monster. Live shows in 2025 brought this crazy idea to life, with Adam singing his classics, Matt singing the hits from his era, and both of them coming together for the new stuff. It was a massive celebration of the band's entire history, a show no fan ever thought they would see. The saga of 3 Days Grace is one of the most incredible stories of using music to get through the darkest times. From a few kids in a garage band to the explosive anger of 1X, they gave a voice to an entire generation of fans fighting their own demons. They became rock legends not by pretending to be perfect, but by showing their scars to the entire world. The departure of Adam Gontier in 2013 should have ended the story. It should have been done. But they refused to die, reinventing themselves with Matt Walst and continuing to release #1 hits. That comeback story alone is one for the history books. But the final insane act of reuniting with Adam to create a dual frontman supergroup makes their story legendary. It's a story about forgiveness, evolution, and knowing that your past, no matter how messy it is, it's what makes you who you are. Today, 3 Days Grace stands as one band that has embraced all of its crazy history. They are living proof of their own music, that it's never too late, and that even after everything falls apart, you can put it back together. Their journey is an epic reminder that the greatest stories aren't about avoiding failure, but about having the guts to get back up over and over again. So what do you think of this insane journey? I want to know what you think in the comments right now. Drop them down there. Were you an original Adam fan? Did you get into the band during the Matt Walst years? Or are you just hyped for this new 2-singer chapter? Let me know your favorite song. And if you want more insane deep dives into your favorite bands, smash that subscribe button and tell us who we should cover next.